Hello.
Hi. So excited.
All right. So I am Breana, aka at Milky Booze.
And I'm Monica from Monica Kim.
Thank you guys for joining us for the discussion of Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. This
Yay.
was our May book club pick for Magical Girl Society, and I am super excited to discuss it. It is, I want to say, like an epic fantasy set in a fantasy world inspired by pre-Columbian Americas, a wealth of characters in their magical fantasy world, and I don't know how to describe it beyond that, but it was a fantastic read. Do you want to start off by giving us
Sure.
your initial thoughts on the book?
I could definitely do that. I really, really enjoyed this one overall. I feel like I fell totally into the world. I feel like the world itself was like unlike anything I've really ever read before in fantasy. And that was like really enthralling to like fall into. And I loved all the different characters and just like seeing the ways in which I feel like Rebecca Roanhorse set up all these characters. Like it felt like they were all put into like the beginning of this like epic chess game or something. And so I really loved all of that. I loved the magic. Um, yeah, I really just loved this book a lot. And I especially loved like a lot of the subversion of like fantasy in general and that sort of like perception of fantasy of being this like very European thing. And, having this, I feel like this book really celebrates, the very rich like culture and history of Indigenous people. And I feel like that's really important um, in a way that like a lot of fantasy books that at least I've read in the past haven't done. And so, yeah, overall, really, really enjoyed this one. So those are my thoughts.
Yes. Yeah, same for me. I really liked how rich the world building is. I think that's like my main thing with fantasy novels, especially I think Rebecca did classify this as an epic fantasy, or that she meant this to be an epic fantasy, and I love how detailed the magic system was. I liked that there were also maps and charts so I can keep track of all of the characters. It was really helpful. I am not smart enough to keep track of all these characters and magic systems on my own, so I really appreciated that. I just felt like we were thrown to this incredibly detailed world, and I have so much respect just like on a writing level to be able to craft something so amazing because I think this was such a great setup to I don't know how many books are going to be in the series in total, but I'm so excited to dive in and see how Rebecca takes this setup and then moves on with her next books because I think that I have a really good understanding of the world now and
Yeah.
characters were also so well written. I thought they were all very distinct and their motives were very clear. And I liked that they all felt very like independent of one another. I feel like when I followed each of their POV chapters, I was always interested in what each of them had to say, and there were no POV characters where I was less interested or like I was like, oh no, like not this character or storyline again. I think everything wove together so well.
Amazing. Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think for me though, definitely Shiala is was my favorite like perspective to read from. I just like loved every time we got to read from her perspective.
Yeah, I love Cielo as well. I know that she's a fan favorite. I remember looking at the Goodreads reviews,
Yeah.
prior to, like, us picking this book and being like, a lot of people really liked her POV chapters, and I agree too, they're really interesting. I also liked, the Rapio's chapters where it was a flashback and you got to see how he was raised and his interactions with
Yeah.
his teacher. I can't remember what you used in the novel was, but the people who taught him how to fight and how to like basically see without seeing. I thought those chapters were super interesting because it also gave us a lot of kind of the lore and
Yeah.
history behind what his mission was, and I like how that was revealed slowly. And then when it comes to his last teacher, um, he was able to find out what his true mission was, and I feel like the emotional weight of that was done so well. really liked Serapio's chapters a lot as well. I think he's probably my favorite.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, yeah, I have a lot of feelings about him. I just realized we're not in spoilers section yet. But I agree. And try to think if there were other like non-spoilery things I wanted to discuss. Um, I just think she did such a good job of like reading this, it felt complete, but it also felt like very much so like the beginning, you know?
Mhm.
Like I was just, it ends on never mind. It just felt like sometimes I feel like I read the beginning of a fantasy series and the first book it feels like a prequel or it feels like unfinished when you get to the end, and I just really appreciated that like this felt like a complete story,
Mhm.
while also feeling like there's so much more.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited to see like what the rest of that is going to be.
Yes. Yes, me as well. Your recipe. I agree. I agree very much. I think also that Naranpa, is that how you pronounce
Yeah, Narumpa.
Naranpa? Yeah, her
Good
chapter
in the audiobook.
also I think had the most side characters as well. So there were a lot of people to follow, as well as they are all in various positions or in different clans. So then you had to keep track of a lot more. And so I think I focused the most during those chapters because I had to remember all the information. And I like tabbied the page that had all the characters listed out because it was a reference the entire time I was reading.
Same. That was very helpful. Like if that wasn't there, I would have been so lost. Kidding. So I was like, wait, who are we? What's happening? And I really appreciated that it wasn't just like a list of people, but like actually like by like where they are and like
Yeah.
like what group they're with. That was very
Yeah.
helpful for me because I was like unsure. Because it is very like political and there's a lot of like moving pieces, which
Mhm.
makes it really fun to read, but also like definitely a bit of a challenge. I read it physically and did the audiobook, which I also think helped me a bit. But yeah, I feel that.
Yeah. All right. Should we head into the spoilery section of discussion? I can throw up a banner.
Little warning.
All right. So this is the time. If you have not yet finished Black Sun or read Black Sun and you do not want to be spoiled for major parts of the plot, I suggest you leave now and then come back and rewatch this live show when you have finished the book because we will be jumping into spoilers.
So that ending. Shall we discuss?
Yes, when it was revealed, I mean, I guess I don't know what I thought was going to happen instead. I make sense that Serapio was meant to go to his death and die in favor of starting like the Year of the Crow. But I remember when I first found that out, like I think it's like to the last third of the book, when his like teacher reveals it to him for the first time about his true destiny. I was so and knowing like how he reveals it to Shiala too when they're together, and then her
Yeah.
disbelief with everything, and especially after we spend so many chapters with her, basically not growing attached to anybody and being a very free spirit, and then just seeing how they together as characters and finding out the heaviness, the weight of this discovery was so well written. I gasped. Even though I
Yeah.
knew it was coming, I was still like,
Yeah, that's the thing is like I was like, he's definitely gonna have to die because like I feel like that once you're like told that you're a god and you're going to like be part of this ceremony, I'm like, okay, well he has to go sacrifice himself. I didn't quite realize he'd have to kill so many people. Because I was like, wait, because when I got to that point, because I really like Serapio, I was like, he's killing so many people. But then I was like, but it's not him, it's the god, right?
yeah.
I was like, I can't really be mad at Serapio.
Yeah, and I remember, I think it when Okwa he flies in and sees all of the bloodshed
Yeah.
beneath him. I was like, and he goes to pick up Serapio's body and they fly away, and like there's the kind of hint that maybe Serapio's not dead after all because
Yeah, yeah.
his eyes kind of open. I thought that was such a good tease for the next book because I feel like because the end, if Serapio had in fact just died at the end, I feel like it would have been such an abrupt ending to a
Yeah,
character that we spent so much time with.
I
So
agree.
I'm excited that
'Cause the actual Narapa wasn't there, so the Sun Priest wasn't there to be killed, so I
yeah.
wonder if that's why he couldn't die?
Yeah, that's a good point though. And I remember when I read that and he finds I can't remember the decadent, this whatever the position is called. Do you remember how to pronounce it? I can't remember.
Wait,
Dedicant.
sure.
Yeah, the dedicant who took her place. Um, when Serafio like peels the mask off and he's like, "You're not who I was
Oh,
looking
yeah,
for."
yeah,
I
yeah.
wonder, is there is it because I know Narampa mentioned that his like the new Sun Priest ceremony for coming to power hadn't happened yet. I wonder if that was mentioned offhandedly to kind of fit in with the fact that
Lead
Serafio
up to that, yeah,
his mission isn't over technically.
that makes sense.
I just saw Rusty's comment.
Oh my gosh, I love them so much. I'm just like, uh, but yeah, I really loved just like watching their relationship form over the book because like it was that was so unexpected for me because I was like I just when you first get introduced to Sarapa, he doesn't seem like a character who's going to have like a romantic
Yeah.
side plot, you know? I'm like, okay, this guy's the chosen one or
Mhm.
whatever. And so the like really like lovely kind of romance that he develops with um why am I blanking all of a sudden? I just like, oh man, I fell for it so hard because that's like also my favorite type of romance in fantasy is when it's kind of unexpected. Especially because like they're so different, you know, like I feel like she's so like big and loud
Mhm.
of a person and he's so like sort of internal. So I just like also loved that dynamic. So I really loved them together and all of their like just the way that like they sort of brought each other out. Um, I really appreciated all of that a lot.
Yeah.
So I really hope that we get to see them again together.
Mhm.
That would be great.
Yeah, I love also the scenes where, um, when Shiala had jumped into the ocean to try to save 2 crewmates, and she turns into a mermaid fish of some sort, and then the rest of the crew
Yeah,
are horrified by her, but Serapio is just like, "Yeah, magic exists. Like, my magic and what I can do, how is it so different from you?" And then, like, they're the only people who kind of understand and accept each other for the things that other people fear them for. I
yeah. Oh
really
my
love
god.
that dynamic as well in the 2 of them.
I really want more of like the teak lore and like world. Like that's what I'm really hoping for in future books because like that little bit that we get with Shiala, I like was so interesting and like good and I like love the like little glimpses that we get into like her past. So I'm hopeful for like more of that in the future because I am very intrigued.
Yeah, I
Also,
wanna find out why she was banished.
yeah, right?
Sounds like a really big plot point and why she's now wandering dangerously when everyone's out for her bones and her eyes and
Yeah.
yeah. Ooh, this is a great question. I this is also a backstory that I would very much like to see
Yeah.
because hints a lot when they were both, dedicants, I think is the word, when they were both studying together and before Narampa had become the Sun Priest and they were lovers and there's still a bit of jealousy and spice there between them. I really liked the scene where after, I can't remember the character's name, but the one of the other priests who kind of praised Naranpa and then kidnaps her and then, like, they
Oh,
try to
Ava?
Oh, yeah, yes, 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 and then we find out that Ikdun raised the whole tower after finding that Naranpa was gone. I was obsessed, especially because the 2 just fought or had an icy, rocky conversation prior to that to know that they still so deeply care for each other even after all this time spent with, like, Naranpa being the Sun Priest and Ikdun being a priest and not being able to be on the same level anymore. I love when you find a character that is cold outwardly, but then obviously cares so deeply about their like about there's ones. It's my favorite type of
I feel that.
relationship. It's ooh the spice. It was such a it was a fast line, but I was like, yes.
I love that. No, I agree. I That was my one question, like, at the end, I was like, "So who was murdered basically at the end, right? Like, who got killed?" Because I was like, "Was Ava there?" Because I feel like Ava would be there. Was that um and then also, like, who was the knife? I forget what, Ikton's title was, but, like, something like that. Was it Ikton? I feel like it wouldn't be because I feel like Ikton was, like, pissed, so I feel like he wouldn't go. Like, maybe he went off to try and find Narampa. That's my hope because I really don't want Big Tom to be dead because, like, they very specifically say that, like, Sharappa killed that person. So I'm like, "But it wasn't Ikton, right?"
Yeah, I think not because I remember when arcs came out that there was some questions back about the pronouns of that character used at the end and asking if it
Right.
was a mistake that the pronouns used weren't Caesar, and then
Oh!
that that wasn't a mistake and it wasn't a misgendering of the character, but rather a hint for the reader as to who was the person that Serapio fought ultimately. Or was it Serapio? I think so, yeah.
Oh, man.
So
That is
I read really I remember because I wasn't sure at the time because obviously I didn't want spoilers, so I didn't look more into, like, the conversation about the arcs, but I read that last part really carefully with Serapio, and I was like, "Oh, like, I'm supposed to be keeping an eye out for the pronouns because that's a hint as to who the person is. Because I remember Rebecca said that was a big part of the ending.
that is true. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to go back and, like, find that section now. Um, and just use that as my hope that Ikton is alive.
I hope Iktan's alive. I feel like that's such an unexplored relationship between Enranpa and Iktan is an unexplored character. 'Cause I feel like we only see Zur in a through Naranpa's eyes and not like Zur's motives or anything that Iktan wants to do. So then we don't get the backstory because we see a lot of what happens ultimately in like secret are kept from Naranpa and the friction in their relationship, but we don't know why it happened or who had what information prior to Narampa's betrayal and the removal of her from the Sun Priest position.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know if there's gonna be more POV characters other than the ones that we read with in Black Sun, but I'm hoping we get to see something. So I think Ikton is a really important character in terms of filling in blanks in the story that we have now.
Yeah, I agree. It'd be great to get Shira's perspective on that. And then also Narampa's brother, who I found fascinating.
Yes. Ochi, or I can't remember his full name, but Ochi in the witch that he employs. Yeah, Zatara?
Uh,
Yeah.
I just loved that like whole scene of like Narampa going into like that sort of den and like re-meeting her brother and like I also loved because like at first I was like, oh, I don't think that her brother will like do anything for her because like obviously he's like very mad at her, but I loved that like he actually did and like did protect her. So now I want more of that relationship.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how their family, because we got that one scene from when they were all children,
Yeah.
wanting to go to like the war college and wanting to rule or whatever, and then they were like, "Oh, we're just kids from the mall. Like we're never gonna get anywhere." And then we find out later that Ron's a priest. I want to find out more, and he like they mention often. He's like, "It's been 23 years since you decided to talk to me. Since you decided you were like too good for our family, and I was left here to pick up all the pieces." Like there's obviously a lot of resentment, and I feel like that's also another relationship that I'm excited to be explored in future books. I also want to find out more about how Zataya, the mystic witch lady that this comic,
Yeah.
how the two of them, like the witch lady and the brother, became friends or rather colleagues. I don't know how to describe their relationship, but I think it's so interesting that, especially when like Zataya shows that she's using what did she call it? Dry or not dry earth? Is it dry earth? Yeah, dry earth magic, and then
Yes.
Naruto's like, "Oh, that's not even real. This is like this is blasphemy. I'm not even gonna believe this." And then the brother was like, "No, you've been brainwashed by your 2 decades in your fancy towers with your fancy teachers. This is where you grew up from." I really liked that it fronted that even if you grew up in a certain community, you can definitely lose yourself in, like, the elitism of another world if you get the opportunity. I like that when she came home and met her mother again, that it was a confrontation of the things that she left behind and so desperately wanted to escape, and that
Yeah.
there are other legitimate magic systems out there that are not just traditionally taught in a school. I'm really excited to see how that kind of manifests because I feel like we're going to meet a plethora of other characters in the future who are not traditional priests who went to the war college or are part of the Skyborn
Yeah.
community, Sky Maid community.
I agree. I really liked her as a character though overall. Like I feel like she wanted to like improve things at least from within. Um and so I liked her journey throughout the book. Like I don't know, I feel like she was very naive at the beginning and then like so I'm intrigued to see like where as a character Narampa goes.
Mhm,
But I always liked her. Um and just like how she sort of like pushed back at least on sort of like some of the traditions.
mhm.
Um, so I'm excited to like see her like have to question that even more, especially like because she's reconnected with her brother. Because I feel like she had all of that, but at the same time, like you were saying, like she really kind of wanted to believe like she could make that change from in this very traditional world as an outsider, basically. Um, and now she's sort of having to confront like how to actually make that change happen, which is maybe not being um part of the structure that she was part of. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really looking forward because I'm sure that Serapio and Nappa have to actually meet in the future, and I'm also
Yeah.
curious about what, Koa does with the letter that Naranpa sent him with just, like, the 3 glyphs. It was, like, storm, betrayal, and a 3rd one, and I was like, "Mm." Poor Okoa, like, just now his mom passed away and then keeps getting these very cryptic letters.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm also really interested to see where, Okoa goes as a character as well because I feel like he's the piece now
Same.
that might be able to merge together, like, Norpa's side of things and Serapio's side, so I don't know, I'm interested to see where it goes because I don't as far as I know, I don't think that Serapio knows Norpa specifically is the Sun Priest, right? He just knows the priest was a woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so
something I'm
interest
interested about because like it does seem like Okoa, not that he wouldn't want Narampa to die, but like I feel like he will kind of be sort of like in the middle a bit.
Mhm.
Um, because he, having had those like couple of moments with Narampa and like having that letter, um, I just feel like they're both like a bit more on the same side um than they thought. And so I'm interested to see how that plays out. And also like, yeah, very interested to see if Narampa and Sarabia ever meet because that would be really cool in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so too. I think I also, like, for Okoa, I remember when he found out what was going to be happening and that he was like, if the person who claims to be the crow god is not really the crow god and fails at the assigned task, like the carrion crow are going to see another genocide essentially from where so he was like trying to prevent any further violence from happening. I mean, obviously it wasn't prevented because Serapio did successfully, at least up until the Sun Priest, successfully carry out his destiny. But I'm interested to see how Okoa tries to piece together everything now that his sister has risen to become the matron of
Mhm.
their order. I can't remember what, yeah, their and he's her shield. And I don't know. I'm interested also to see his relationship with his sister because I feel like from what we saw, it was just like sibling bickering.
Yeah.
But I feel like now that they both have this heavy pressure on their shoulders and this massacre that just happened must be his sister didn't die, right? Because the carrion crows didn't show up to the
No, I don't think so. Yeah, they stayed away. Um, I so did we figure out who killed their mom?
no, no, I don't think so. Unless it was revealed in like a
Yeah, I
one line?
think
I
so.
don't think so. I think there
I
was just
wasn't I wasn't sure because I felt like it was hinted at that it was the sun watchers, the sun priests, but like Ava or someone, but I don't know, like I don't think it was confirmed.
yeah, I just remember the last thing I remember reading about the mom is that a reference back to how the crows were trying to claim that she just passed away in her bed, but actually they're like,
Yeah,
maybe it was suicide and she jumped out the window, but then the letter that Okoa got that suggested that it was in fact murder. I don't know. There's speculation that it might have been a couple people. I don't think that anything was confirmed. I feel like that's something that we're gonna find out, and then I think that might be a part of the plot that changes Okoa as a character and changes his motives if he figures out
who
what really
did it?
happened with his mom. Yeah.
Yeah. I hope it's not his sister, that would be rough.
I would also hope it's not his sister. That'd be extremely upsetting.
Oy. Oh my gosh, I agree with this.
Oh,
I I just, like, would love to see that visual.
yes. And the water strider that, I think was it Shiala who saw it for a moment and then, at the docks or and then she was like, "What is that?" And they're like, "Oh, like, this is my pet, like, we ride them, he's friendly, like, come pet this
Exactly.
six-legged bug."
Yeah, oh my gosh.
I think I would have cried, and that was just a baby water strider.
I feel like there's so much about this book that's, like, so visually like, would lend itself so well to, like, really amazing, like, visuals if it
Yeah,
were to ever be adapted, you know?
I feel like it'd be a really cool, animated series too if they wanted to go down that route.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I don't know, I feel like CGI sometimes looks kinda crusty
Yeah,
depending on
that's
how
real, that's real.
the animals it could look crusty, or it could look terrifying. Because I feel like seeing a CGI water strider that's humongous enough to ride on, I would cry.
Yeah, I that's the thing is I don't think I could actually handle if they were ever to adapt this. Like, I don't know if I could watch it, but I feel like it'd be amazing. But maybe if they did it animated, I could do it.
I know another comment had mentioned earlier, let me find it. This yeah, the great movies. I think a lot of just so, like, continuing on with this conversation about, like, animated versus live action, I didn't this was on me, but I didn't look up the trigger warnings for this book prior to starting it. I didn't realize there would be a lot of body mutilation or not a lot per se, but like the chapters where they were very important chapters, so it wasn't like
Yeah,
you just
yeah.
over it. That's one thing where if they did an adaptation, of course, that would be a really central part to the story because it's a lot of Sarpio's background with his mom and all of his teachers about the physical harm that they've put him under. I remember reading that and the part where TW, the part where he slices open his eyelids right before he opens them to the sun. I read that and my body the biggest chill. I feel like
Yeah, no, I agree. I would say the only book because I don't typically read very, that, like I don't typically read fantasy that has, like, a lot of, like, graphic violence. Or as much like graphic depictions of violence. And this probably like for a lot of fantasy readers isn't even that much, but for me, because I don't, it's a lot. So the only thing I like the frame of reference that I have would be like the Poppy War, where I had that sort of feeling of like not, but like I think where it does it in this way that like never feels gratuitous and never feels exploitative, which I think is really important because like that's one of the reasons why I tend to steer away from fantasy that has more graphic violence in it is because it often feels like those things. It often feels like it's, being done to shock or like it's exploiting the people who are being hurt. But I feel like in this book, um, I never felt that way. Like it always felt like um, it was important to the story and also like I don't know fully how to describe it, but there's just like this feeling. Like even though I don't love still reading like violent, like super violent moments, it doesn't feel like torture porn.
yeah.
Um,
I also think with the eyes in particular, like I think eyes in particular are a violent play like a violence anywhere near your eyes is a very sensitive thing for me because I picture it immediately. But I think that because I agree, it's like it didn't feel gratuitous at all because we were set up the entire story to know that one day this was going to happen and he was going to open his eyes again. And of course,
Yeah.
because we know his eyes had basically healed that this would happen. So I definitely agree that when these moments happened, I wasn't like, oh, why'd you write this in here? Like it felt very much purposeful to the point of the story and like how much Serapio was willing to sacrifice in terms of personal pain to do what he was destined to. And I think that speaks so much to his character as well that I feel like we don't even necessarily get the feeling that he wants to carry out his mother's vengeance, but that he's just told about his his mom's plans for him and he accepts them easily and carries them out and endures the pain. And there was a scene too with him and Shiala where talk about I offhandedly he asks her about her past and then she's like, yeah, my mom was a monster too. And then Strapio thinks to himself, he's like, I don't think my mom was a monster for what she did to me, but I understand why someone else would think that. And I thought
Yeah.
that's an interesting look into his psyche that after, having his skin carved, his eyes sewn shut, having been visibly blind at the age of 12 by his mom, that he didn't at least from what I read in his chapter, it didn't feel like he resented her and he felt enough duty and love towards her to want to carry on her mission of vengeance, and I think that's something really interesting that I hope is explored more in the
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I thought about that until just now, but I hope that they do explore that, and especially, like, because I feel like everything that's sort of, like, pushing Serapio forward is that feeling of duty and also that, like, desire of wanting to belong somewhere, like, even at the end, the book references, like, that he's going home, and I feel like that's all Serapio has wanted is to, like, have a home, um, and I just want that for him, and I also, like I feel like there's a lot of stuff that he kind of needs to work through and, like, unpack about his childhood,
Yeah.
because I don't think he's ever really allowed himself to, like, be angry, like, none of the stuff that
Mhm.
he's taken on was his choice, and I feel like he has a right to, like, be resentful or be angry, um, and to push back on that, so I am interested to see if that becomes part of his character journey in the
Yeah,
future.
I definitely agree. Serapio, now that we're just talking about him more, he's such a fascinating character because I know that there's a scene with one of his teachers, Pawaga, and he was mentioning like Serapio's like, oh, I haven't loved anyone or I haven't tried to love anyone or care for anyone on a personal level since my mom.
Mhm.
This was, I think, like the third teacher who came, and he had already killed the two previous teachers. And then he was like, I've spent so long, like my mom you saw me as a vessel. My dad resented me for who I was, like was disgusted by me and what I had become. Like my previous two teachers only saw me as a means to an end as well. And like this one moment with his third teacher, he was like, maybe this is the first time I might actually feel something besides just like I'm a tool in someone else's game. And yeah, the feel and he also mentions at some point, like, he mentioned at the end, like, it's like, "Oh, like, we're going home, he's finally gonna find his community." There's a part where he mentions that he's doing all of these things and sacrificing his whole life for a group of people that he's never met before.
Yeah.
Like, I think that was that scene, that one paragraph, I was like, "Oh my god." It's true, he's, like, 20 something, like, 22, and has sacrificed happiness, companionship, family, personal comfort, sight
Yeah.
for a community that he's never been a part of, that he's never felt love from, that
Yeah, and I
he
feel like that's gonna actually play, like, a really big part in the future books because, like, I can't imagine that he's going to be welcomed, I think I think it would have been, like, for him probably, like, he saw it as, like, this clean ending for him, like, he sacrificed for them and, like, could have that sort of, like, idea of, like, being part of this world, but now he's done this thing and he's going to actually be part of that world, and I can't imagine that it will live up to what he's sort of, like, imagined it to be.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I'm interested to see, like, just what that is going to be like.
Yeah, especially because there were already non-believers. There were, like, the cultists of the Carrion Crows were the only people who believed that the Crow God was gonna return and
Yeah.
get vengeance for them, and then everyone else, they were non-believers or otherwise not praying directly to the Crow God, and so I'm interested to see how if he is even able to mend those 2 opposing sides within his own clan. Oh, yes.
Yeah. That was painful.
And he just, like, leaves Gialla in the bath and then thinks about it. He's like, "What if I was just a dude and
What
a vessel for a god who's going to seek vengeance for my clan?" Like, ah. That's
Oh,
I think that was also one of the first moments where we really get a peek into what Serapio wants for himself too.
yeah, I agree. Teachers and what Mm, yeah. Well, they do mention, like, the 2 at least, what leads him to kill the first 2. One was threatening his crows, and the other was threatening
His
I
family,
forget, his family?
and he was like, "You can do whatever violence you want to me, but once you threaten those that I care about." Actually, I think that also is a very big indicator of Serapio's personality and his motives.
Yeah,
Interesting, because now he has not just his crows and, like, his mom and dad, but a whole wealth of people who are gonna see him as their savior. So I wonder, yeah, that's right, that's right. I did forget that he did mention why he ended up coming to blows with his previous teachers.
yeah. I do wish, like, we could have seen seen those moments versus being, like, told them,
Yeah,
because I think it would have had a bit more of an impact, but also, like, I really liked that scene at the same time where, like, he was telling the story. So, yeah.
yeah,
Oh, I loved how, like, unabashedly queer the whole book was too.
yes,
I just, like, without, like, it was just, like, part of the world, you know? I thought that was really, really well done.
yeah, same. I remember, like, characters would use neo-pronouns, like, Shiela is bisexual, and then there was a character, I think someone's wife where, Okoa had known the wife, they were both children, and then the wife was like, "Oh, we played as boys," and she's like, "But I'm a woman," or like, "I was always a woman, but now I've finally been able to
Yeah.
everyone else." And I really liked how it wasn't there's no pomp, like, "Oh, look at this," but they were just a character, like, she was just a character. It
Yeah, it was just the world. It was just part of
Yeah,
that world. And I really liked that
felt really
whole
nice for it all to be, like, normalized. Mhm.
great. I'm trying to think if there were other key things I wanted to discuss. How about you?
Ooh, the scene at the 3rd teacher that, Serapio had mentioned that, like, Balaam, the merchant lord, had actually known
Right.
his mom, and, like, they had all known each other as young people, and they had
Yeah.
fascinated with his mom, and then, like, I feel like we only saw Balaam for, like, the first 5 chapters or so, and then he sends Shiel on the ship with Serapio, and then we don't hear from him again, but it sounds like he was a very important part of setting up this whole rebirth vessel situation, because there's one, like, the chapter, not chapter prequels, but those little paragraphs that happen right before each chapter. There was one chapter where it's a flashback to Saya, the mom, and Balaam as young people, and they're first trying to discover and read through books of, like, blood sacrifice and, like, dark magic to figure out how to create a vessel. And I'm like, Balaam sounds like a really, really actually important part of this story and an important part of everything that happened up until the current events. It seems like he must come back, and also
Yeah.
become like a merchant lord instead of
Yeah, that was my question because, like, before we got more bit more of that, I was like, "What happened to this dude?" Because he was introduced and, like, I was instantly very intrigued by him because he was, like, a really fun character, like, right off the bat. Like, his personality was very like, the type of character I always tend to, like, love. Um, and so then he was gone, and I was like, well, can we go back to him? But learning all of that was just like wild. So I really do hope we get a bit more, and just like understanding of like how he became a merchant lord, and also like why he would still want this to happen, I guess.
Yeah.
Like I
Oh,
just want to know his motivations a bit more.
this too, I forgot that this was mentioned, but Balam could tell when she was about to sing.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot about that.
So I wonder what his history, because I feel like what would be interesting. I don't know if it's gonna happen, but if you know how in Black Sun there are like kind of prequely chapters, like chapters where you got to see things that happened in the past. If we got to see chapters of Balam, Serapio's mom, and all of the tutors in their quest before Serapio even was born, like in their quest to figure out how to resurrect the Crow God, and all of the political intrigue that was there before, because I know like one tutor was a spear maiden, and the other was one of the priests of knives, I think.
Yeah.
And they both had connections to the priesthood and to the Sky Maid clans prior, and then they all abandoned this to specifically focus on the Crow God. So I'm interested to see how they all met, what all of their specific motives were, and then how like the history of how Serapio came to be. I feel like that would be so interesting.
No, I agree. Um, I don't know how someone asked how long the series will be. I don't know. There's book two planned. Yeah, I haven't heard anything about like future books. I'm interested to see if it's going to be like a duology or if it's going to be like the super big like long series.
Mm.
I would be fine either way, honestly.
Yeah, so would I, depending on what happens, obviously in book two, I'd be cool with whatever. This is definitely a world that I would feel sad to leave early.
Yeah, I feel that.
Books.
I agree.
But I did, before this, I asked Monica the same thing if she knew how long the series was, and then we looked it up on Goodreads, and there is a book two listed on there with no title, no release date, and no other information. And I think it was posted onto Goodreads like 3 months ago, and nothing, no cover, like nothing, not even a fake image of like a blank book. So I'm very curious. I don't follow Rebecca Roanhorse on Twitter or on any socials. So I'm not sure if she's like announced anything or given more info, but
I don't
based on
know.
my preliminary internet research, there is only one book that's been announced, and we have no idea when it's going to come out, which makes sense because I think Black Sun just came out like last November or something like that. So I
Yeah.
feel like I could completely understand a book of this density and this level of detail not coming out for a couple of years.
Oh, that's painful, but it's true. It's real. What?
Wait, this changes the game this year.
I hope so. Oh my gosh, that'd be amazing.
I hope so too. Not that I think I'd be lucky enough to get an arc, but at least then, like, I can live vicariously through the people who do get arcs and then hear their thoughts.
Yeah, we know that like the future is on the horizon or something. We know that it's coming at least. Oh,
So exciting. I agree with this comment.
yeah, this book really made me want to go back and read more by Rebecca Roanhorse because this was my first time reading anything.
Same, same. I think she has a middle grade series too, no middle grade fantasy with the Rick Riordan imprint.
Oh, right, yeah.
I'm almost it's like Race to the Sun, something like that. I can't remember exactly the title, but I'm almost positive that's where I first heard about her as an author is through the middle grade fantasy series. And now I'm like really interested because I mean, of course, this is not anywhere like middle. It's definitely an adult fantasy, but I really do like writing style and her attention to detail and the way she builds characters. So I feel like I'm interested to see how that translates to a middle grade fantasy.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just gonna have to pick that up.
I'm like, yeah, maybe that's what I'm going to be doing today after this live.
Oh, apparently she wrote a dystopian YA.
Oh, I didn't even know I just knew about the middle grade fantasy.
Yeah.
Oh, Rebecca Roanhorse out here conquering all levels of
Yeah.
fantasy.
I love
Honestly,
that.
I haven't read a dystopian YA in a while, I feel like, because after the
Yeah.
craze of the Hunger Games in, like, the late 2000s, early 2010s, I feel like there were a lot of dystopian YAs
Yeah.
that I read, so I took a break for, a decade. But maybe I'm ready to jump back into the fray because I have trust in Rebecca Roanhorse now as an author.
Amazing. I'm trying to think any other key talking points. Anything else?
Let me look at what did I post a note?
So, oh, I also agree with what Rusty said. I don't think I also read another fantasy that used she, share
Oh, oh,
pronoun.
is that how you pronounce it? I wasn't sure because I didn't listen to the audiobook.
That's what well, that's how it was pronounced in the audiobook, um,
Yeah,
at least. Yeah, I agree. And I liked how um I forget who mentioned it, but someone said like uh that they just have a third gender in their
Pawagay, the tutor,
yes.
their teacher.
So Cher said that Cher has like just a third gender as part of like their world in general, and I really liked that element because also have never read that in another fantasy before.
Yeah, I don't think I've even read that in any book. I don't think I've read any book I've read a lot of books by queer authors with queer characters, and I don't think I've ever seen neopronouns used.
Yeah, I also really appreciated like how Rebecca Roanhorse integrated that into the book, like into the actual um like how she just switched out the pronouns. And like at first I was confused, like I didn't realize what was happening, but then like once I figured out that that's what was happening, it was like it's just fascinating to me like how quickly your brain adapts. Like
Yeah,
it's just like okay, yeah,
yeah,
and now we're moving on. And the story like so I really appreciated that because and it made me hopeful that they'll do that more books will have that kind of representation in it because it wasn't this big hurdle that I feel like some people might view it as.
yeah,
Like it didn't cause any confusion or like it was just normal. It was just part of the world. And I really appreciated that personally.
definitely. Oh, there's here.
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, same. I haven't heard of that book or the author.
Yeah.
Although to be fair, I guess I don't read short stories that often. I should read more short stories, actually.
I
Wow, that
always want to, but I just really struggle with actually getting through them. Short stories, like I'll read one or two and then I'm like, okay, no matter like how amazing it is. But yeah, I really want more books with neo pronouns. I always forget that that's the word for it.
I also I can't remember where it was on Twitter, like someone quoted an interview with Rebecca Roanhurst, but like she was talking about how like she wanted to incorporate neopronouns because so many people are like, oh, like it's so much to remember. Like I don't want to have to do and not wanting to put the effort into it. But then she was being like, well, so you'll read like Game of Thrones where you have to learn like Daenerys and like all those things.
Yeah.
And you're fine with that. Like that's not an interrupter for you, but a letter neopronoun.
Yeah. And I feel
Once
like
that your whole reading experience.
yeah, and I feel like she does such a good job of like killing that argument. Like it takes one paragraph and then you're used to it in the book.
Yeah, and it doesn't in no way hinders understanding of the story. So I really appreciate that she put such care into it was so intentional to include pronouns, to include like non-binary characters, to include queer characters without making it their personality. Not that there's anything wrong with that either. I feel like a lot of books, if they'll be like, look at this character, like they are capital D different. Like please pay attention to this aspect of their
Yeah.
identity. But this is just like everyone just exists in this world.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like it's important to have like both types of stories. Like I think it's important to have like stories where that is the focus and stories where like you're a person just living your life.
Mhm.
and like getting to have like a fantastical adventure too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think especially yeah, I think in the context of fantasy, I really appreciate that 'cause of course, like, if it was like a contemporary novel, then that might be like a bigger focus, and so then it makes complete sense in a fantasy novel where the focus is of the political intrigue and the
Yeah.
magic. I really appreciate that all the characters can just exist and be who they are and
Yeah.
then participate in the world.
hmm I also think like it really plays into like how much Rebecca Roanhorse like subverts like a lot of like Western colonialism, um, because
Mhm.
like so much of gender roles and like gender in general is like built by those structures, and so like of course this book that like is supposed to predate that and sort of exist without that isn't going to like have those restrictions.
Yeah. That's such a good point that yeah, this is like the pre-Columbian cultures and then so many indigenous cultures had no had no concept or like feeling of gender norms until colonization happened and then the West imparted like their homophobia, their transphobia onto indigenous cultures. And then now the West treats being accepting as something new that they invented
Yeah.
when indigenous cultures have been accepting for it was I wouldn't call it acceptance because it was just existence until they were forced into this other method of thinking by the West. That's such a good thing to that you brought up because I know that's something that like a lot of people have been talking about recently with like Westerners or Western liberals touting their amazing politics and
Yeah.
looking down on the global South for having like backwards when it was the West that imparted these ideologies upon them. You're totally right. I didn't even think about that until that. Yeah, like if for a book that predates Western colonialism, this isn't new at all. Like these thoughts on gender, on neopronouns, on identity are not like, oh, a 21st century creation.
Yeah. What a good book.
What a good I I had no idea what the book was about before jumping into it, and I just
Same.
knew that everyone who read the book prior to me was obsessed.
Mhm.
4 and 5 stars all across the board from pretty much everyone that I knew, and I was like, "Oh."
Time to read.
And I agree.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
I think that's all for me for everything I wanted to discuss.
I think same. But this has been so fun. I'm glad we got to talk through it. I'm excited to discuss Gideon, which will be probably our next live. We'll be rescheduling that one probably for sometime this week. So we'll keep you all posted on that. And then to discuss Black Sun. I mean, not Black Sun, sorry.
Raybearer.
Raybearer, which I'm so excited for. My copy just came in.
Yeah,
I need to trying to order UK editions because I keep getting lost in the mail. But like, where is it? Do I have it? Is it like
you
it's
can
so pretty? It's so pretty. Where is it? Here it is.
Is it the tigers with the yes, or the
Mhm.
lions? I don't know my animals. Yes, so pretty with the face in the middle. I remember everyone posting about it and not, "Oh, it is so pretty."
It is. It's so pretty. I was like, I need to have it. And then they posted the second one, and it looked just as pretty. So I was like, yes, I'll be ordering. Okay. So
But thank
anyway,
you everyone for joining our live discussion of Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. I have included all of the Magical Girl Society links in the description, as well as Monica's channels and Twitter and my socials. So all of our social information is down below if you guys are interested. For June, as just previously mentioned, our book is Raybearer by Jordan Ifueko, and our anime for this month is Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. So if you are interested in either of those things, definitely join our Discord because that's where all the discussion happens. And I hope to see you guys again next time.
yay. Thanks for joining and thanks for hosting.
Yes. Bye, everyone.
Bye.